Okay, I think we're ready to start.
Yes, good morning, afternoon, and wherever you're tuning in from, welcome to TLC's Cybersecurity Basics. Please welcome Danny Vargas to kick us off.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second edition of our Hot Topic series, Cybersecurity Basics, the do's and don'ts of protecting your business. I want to appreciate everyone for joining us today and our panelists. As mentioned, my name is Danny Vargas. I'm the CEO and president of Varcom Solutions, and I'm also the national director of the Latino Coalition. We look forward to a roundtable discussion today that's going to be really interesting and fascinating. And to start us off, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Wells Fargo, for helping to make this new series possible. We appreciate all the support that they've been giving small businesses across the country and their support for the Latino Coalition. On behalf of the Latino Coalition, I want to thank our presenters today for taking the time to be with us. We're really excited to hear from them on this topic, and they are such incredible experts, and we're all going to learn a lot from them. We're looking forward to a very meaningful discussion covering how small businesses can protect themselves from cybersecurity threats today. As we know, they are incredibly out there, and we have to deal with them. I'd like to go ahead and introduce our panelists. I'm going to start with Burton Kelso. Burton is the owner and chief technology expert at Integral, an on-site and remote computer and laptop repair service company for consumers and for businesses. His vision is to remove the frustrations and complexity of computers and technology and open people up to a world of new ideas, experiences, and opportunities. Thank you, Burton, for joining us.
Thank you.
Our next panelist is Ray Ayers. Ray is in a cybersecurity manager position for PG&E out in California. He manages the cybersecurity business risk management team. Ray has been a proven security practitioner for over 25 years in various leadership and trusted advisory positions. Additionally, Ray has held positions as a consultant, systems architect, and engineer across financial services, retail supply chain, and energy sectors throughout his career. You know, to start us off, I really want to just dive right into our conversation. But to begin with, why don't you each take a moment or two to tell us a little bit about yourselves and your role in helping people and businesses stay cyber secure. Why don't we start with you, Burton?
Well, as a owner of a technology services company, it seems like it's second nature to not only fix computers, but obviously to keep people safe from computers and technology. One of the most important things that I tell small business owners is that 95 to 90% of all cybercrime requires user interaction. So we try to inform most business owners that they need to get out of the process of keeping their heads out of the sand or buried in the sand, and to get it out of the sand and make sure that they are informed and know about a lot of the cyber threats out there. Because most cybercrime, since it requires user interaction, means that people need to educate themselves on making sure that they're not clicking on suspicious links or falling for suspicious text messages or voicemail messages that come in through their smartphones and other devices. So education is the key, and that's probably one of the top ways that we're going to defeat this threat of cybercrime.
Thanks, Burton. Ray, why don't you take a moment to give us a little bit of a rundown on your background as well?
Sure. As Danny alluded to, I'm actually been in the industry about 25 plus years, wore multiple hats. Now, again, me working in a corporate environment obviously has a different aspect in terms of identifying threat, as well as risks and protecting in different manners, right? From a small business perspective, you know, it still applies the same way. And just to piggyback what Burton was saying to, you know, the adversary is obviously targeting the weakest link in the actual system, which is actually the end users. You know, they try to manipulate aspects to convince them to actually click on links. Again, those are the biggest vectors right now to, for the adversaries in themselves, just to get into the systems going forward, right? So yeah, that's pretty much in terms of what my aspects is from a corporate environment, but I'm sure I'd be able to align some of the practices that's being done within corporate along with the, you know, in comparison to the small businesses aspects.
Well, since you're there, Ray, why don't we just expand on what you were just talking about? So we're talking about some of the best practices that companies can use to remain cyber secure. Why don't you just expand on a couple of other ideas that might be good practices for small business to implement from a cybersecurity perspective?
Sure, sure. So however large your small business is, it comes down to how you actually practice your operations from a system perspective. You obviously want to take into consideration your perimeter defense to ensure that you at least have a foundation there to ensure that there's nothing coming in to into your systems just in general. Again, know your actual sources that you're trying to protect. So whether it be data, PII information, what have you, just know what you're trying to protect and start wrapping the appropriate controls around it. Again, I would expand on obviously the perimeter defense aspect of that, making sure that you have good practice from an identity and access management perspective, along with a good endpoint protection platform to ensure that your end user systems that they interact with is in fact at least got some level of defense to ensure that they have that protection. With that, you can go beyond that if you want to start expanding your security posture, along with additional technologies that goes further beyond just from a detection aspect. So again, you won't be able to prevent the number of attacks you start seeing, but you want to make sure you have the key detection mechanism to ensure that you at least know they're there.
That's an excellent point, Ray. Burton, have you got anything to add in that list of best practices that some of our small businesses can implement?
Yeah, I would highly recommend that small business, it doesn't matter if it's 2 to 2,000 employees, that you really have to educate your staff on how to interact with all of the cyber threats that come across. Like I said before, many of these threats are going to come in the form of a phishing email, a phishing text message, or even a voice phone call that's designed to trick the end user into falling for a scheme that's going to allow a criminal to get access to sensitive data regarding the company, or B, they will click on a link that will allow a piece of malicious software to get installed the company network, which can result with either stolen data or with even ransomware attacks that can attack the entire network. So it doesn't matter if you are doing this practice in-house or if you hire a third-party vendor to come in to make sure that employees aren't doing stupid stuff when it comes to these links that come through. And it's not that people are stupid when it comes to technology. It's a lot of these cyber threats are socially engineered, which means that cyber criminals work a 9 to 5 or even a 24-hour network where they're finding out what people are going to click on, what links are going to trigger people to react to phishing email and text messages that come in. So you really have to educate your staff so that they can identify this stuff, because these criminals aren't just your hacker sitting in the basement. We're talking about large criminal organizations that have a global reach, and their sole goal is to find ways and to trick people into giving up sensitive data or allowing a malicious piece of code to get into the company network. So education is key.
So you mentioned education. I think that's a key point to bring across, Burton. Are there specific types of training that you think should be recommended to all staff to take?
Well, yes, the primary, and I think a lot of companies have already implemented this, is the trick or the method of tricking employees to see if they're going to fall for phishing schemes. So I know there's larger corporations that will send out a fake email message every now and then to see who clicks on specific links as far as cybercrime is concerned. Other things that obviously need to be put in place is HR departments need to create a cyber rules manual as far as how employees utilize either a BYOD, meaning bring your own device, or what they should do when they use company devices. Because I think corporations and even small businesses fall victim to people who decide they're going to use company time to shop on Amazon, or maybe they want to find the latest recipe to make that popular holiday dish. And if you get too far into the rabbit hole, it's definitely going to take you into areas where your employees are endangering your company network. Obviously, social media use is big too. So maybe you create a company policy where employees aren't using social media or they aren't using websites, but also you do need a proactive approach too, where every now and then you're testing your workforce or your team members to make sure that they're not falling for schemes. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in-house, because a lot of large corporations work with vendors who can cause your company network to fall victim to either a data breach or to ransomware. So work with your vendors too. Send them a malicious link to see if they're going to click on it. Well, not malicious, but something that they really shouldn't click on, to make sure that the partners that you're working with aren't going to jeopardize your company network and your company infrastructure.
Yeah, it's what we used to call in the military. We used to call that OPSEC, operational security. But so you're saying that it's a responsibility of each individual to keep the organization secure, and we can't rely on superheroes to do it for us, like the ones you have behind you on your
Right.
desk. I'm a big fan of what you got there. That's great.
Right.
Hey, Ray, Burton mentioned social media. I'd love for you, Ray, to touch on your thoughts on how much of a threat individuals' access and usage of social media plays in the cybersecurity realm.
No, definitely. Yeah, I mean, when you start thinking about social media, I mean, that's an actual platform where you basically, I think most people drop their guard in terms of being more open in terms of what they know, what they do. So from an adversary's perspective, I mean, they can participate in discussions regarding, hey, so you're working for such and such company. Hey, what kind of technology do you guys have? Hey, by the way, what version? So that's an opportunity for them to start mining some of this information in preparation for an attack. So for social media in that aspect, to me, is actually a very sensitive aspect. So it comes down to employee awareness from a training perspective. Right? You need to train your employees to not convey such information within social media to allow these adversaries to gather these specific information and just start crafting their ways of approaching your business. So to me, I think the social media is a strong area from a threat vector perspective if you're looking at it from an adversary's perspective.
Hey,
Would
Danny,
you
I was
recommend, one second, Ray, would you recommend sort of putting a leash on employees' ability to use social media?
It's going to be difficult because obviously the small businesses are dependent on actually their marketing campaigns to utilize social media. So with that aspect, they start releasing some of their information in that form. So it's kind of that balance to understand how much effort do you want to utilize social media from an advertising perspective. So that's where the small businesses should start taking into consideration. So training is key. So if you don't have the rest of your employees aligned with that mindset, you want to make sure you get them that empowerment type of ability to say, hey, it takes a whole village to make sure they defend and protect. So to what Burton was alluding to, you got to make sure that the employees are trained, make sure that they are part of the defense aspect into the business.
Yeah, Burton, you wanted to add something. I apologize for interrupting you. Yes, sir.
No, that's fine. I didn't really mean to jump in like that. But one of the other things that I think small businesses struggle with is the type of IT staff that they have available that kind of dumbs down the cybersecurity aspect in a way that they understand. A lot of people react to what they hear as far as protecting their small business. So you'll see people have a lot of different protection tools where they realistically maybe only need one. But the arena of IT, I guess the arena of IT services sometimes is where you've got IT professionals that are talking over the heads of the small business owners or small businesses. So they may feel intimidated and they may follow some of the rules, but at the same time, is it in a language that they can understand what they need to do in order to protect themselves? Because IT guys have a tendency to use a lot of tech slang or acronyms, and it may just go over the head of the end user. So it's really important for small businesses to partner with IT professionals that are able to protect them, but at the same time, help them understand in a more everyday sense what things they need to do in order to stay safe.
What you mentioned, Burton, is incredibly important, especially nowadays that we've had a year and a half or so of folks living through the pandemic and companies and small businesses having to shift the way that they operate, from brick and mortar to a more online presence and doing operations virtually that they might not have in the past? Or are they having to exist in a virtual world and having to rely on IT resources that they may not be aware of? From your perspective, having to serve small businesses in your company, Burton, how have you seen some of the policies shift now that a lot of it is doing, a lot of remote work is being taken place?
Well, I've seen where a lot of businesses have allowed remote workforce use more of a BYD approach, where it's bring your own device. So rather than having to purchase technology for the workforce to take home, companies are allowing people to use their own computer stuff. So a lot of companies have moved to the cloud as far as accessing and sharing documents, and of course doing online seminars. So that is a challenge in itself, because the corporate IT person may not know what things the person can and can't do with their computer. And even from a sense of the person working from home dealing with company technology, it's kind of harder for the IT teams to kind of have a reach to figure out how each person is going to use that device. Some people may use it only exclusively for work. Other people may allow their kids to get online, play games, and do other stuff. So I think with person using their own technology, you kind of have to have an open, you have to leave it a little open, because it is their device. You can lock it down a little bit when it's company owned, but at the same time, you just have to take the time of explaining why it needs to be locked down, rather than just saying, hey, it needs to be locked down, and that's what I said. It just needs to be more of an open approach.
Yeah. Hey, Ray, as at PG&E, which is a more sophisticated, mature, larger organization, what are you seeing from a remote work policy perspective?
Yeah, I mean, from a corporate aspect, we obviously are very aware of the BYODs, right? So we basically have the monitoring and management capability of all assets to ensure that our controls is monitoring each endpoint. The challenges where the small businesses are going to have do you have them utilize their existing systems where you can't monitor these specific controls, or even have the ability to detect any type of triggers from an adversary? So the benefits of actually having a platform where the VPN, virtual private network, to establish the connections back into the corporate environment, we take into consideration, we obviously don't want to have a direct connections from their systems. So, we utilize systems like virtual workstations, where rather than having them utilize their base computers, they would log into a portal, and then from that portal, they would basically launch a virtual desktop as if they were actually in the office. So that would be one means to control some of the activities that's being done virtually and remote, because at least the virtual endpoint is still controlled on-prem from a company's perspective.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is that it's not a simple process, but it's doable.
It is doable.
How would you recommend a small business, for example, to get started on creating a training plan or a process that would be workable and safe and secure?
So it's going to vary in terms of what the business practice of each small business actually has, right? You have options to maybe utilize a service like Azure. Azure offers up remote desktop capabilities. I don't know where their current infrastructure resides. Do they have an on-prem infrastructure in terms of operating their business? Are they using the cloud? So these are all these things that needs to be taken into consideration. You might operate in a hybrid state, meaning you have some on-prem infrastructure and you have cloud infrastructure. Then you might be able to utilize these workstations to access maybe just the cloud resources you need, but you need to take into consideration the core systems that you're going to require for each employee to access. So that's one avenue to maybe entertain. But altogether, it's all going to come down to each individual's business and what the requirements are to take into consideration what infrastructure looks, right for them to utilize.
And it would seem to me that there's probably a wide range of policies and systems that a company can implement, from small to large, from simple to complex, but I think what I'm hearing is that they need to do something, right? So Burton, what's your take? I mean, what's, as someone who has to help small businesses implement these types of things, can you give me just a sense of what's the most basic that one can do, and then sort of iterate that to the next couple of steps that would be just a little bit more complex?
Well, in this age of ransomware that we live in, I think the very basic thing that most small businesses can do is to make sure they have a complete backup of all of their information. Because if you're familiar with ransomware, what it does is once it gets into your system, it can infect the entire company network and just lock up all your files. And so when you read about these instances of businesses falling victim to ransomware, a lot of them end up paying the ransom just for the simple fact that they don't have a recent backup of their stuff. If you get ransomware, and you have an up-to-date backup for your entire small business network, then you can just you can be nice. You can nicely tell the bad guys where to go and ignore the ransomware message and just wipe all your systems and restore your data. But obviously, everyone should know when it comes to ransomware, if you get stuck with ransomware on your devices, you never pay the ransom, because if you do, it definitely will make you more of a target to cyber criminals. They figure if you could pay $50,000 to get your information, then they may target you for a larger sum of money in the future if they get access to your computer. So backing up is probably one of the best things that you can do. And if you are a business that utilizes cloud to store information, don't assume that your cloud provider is backing up your information for you. You should always make sure that you have a backup of the information that's on the cloud. So if your cloud account gets hit, then you can restore your information from backup and keep going. Because not all business systems are going to be completely secure from a cyber attack. But what you want to do is you want to be able to have the ability to recover quickly if you get hit with a cyber attack. Because one of the things that happens with ransomware and other cyber attacks is that businesses lose out on hours or even days of productivity because they're not able to get their information and get back to work.
And then you talked about detection earlier as well. What's the minimum type of detection software that, or protocols that they should have in place?
Well, if you're working with server, then obviously you need to have server-based antivirus software on there, and you need to choose one, not multiple antivirus software out there. I know there's companies that'll have like 4 or 5 different antivirus products working in tandem, and it definitely causes a problem on the server, and even the workstations are concerned. My recommendation as far as the protection is obviously, number one, it's got to be people protection, because most cyber terrorists or criminals are able to get past most antivirus software out there. But if you have an environment where you're using Apple computers, your Apple OS software is the antivirus software. So there's no need for additional software for an Apple device. For Windows devices, on both the small business level and sometimes on even the corporate level, you can get by with Windows 10 Windows Defender. I mean, it's got ransomware protection, it's got antivirus protection in order to make sure that the workstation is going to stay protected, provided that the end user is not clicking on malicious links. But even if they do, your Windows software will pop up and stop those threats from occurring. Now, as far as server, if you've got a server in-house, Trend Micro, McAfee, even ESET would be good products to install on your server to ensure that your server is protected from antivirus threats, or not antivirus, or virus threats. But also, if you can do what you can to keep that server off of the internet, that's going to be another step that's going to prevent cyber criminals from getting into your corporate network.
And worst case, they can always go to a consultant like you to figure out what the best software. Right?
Danny, the idea is to keep end users so that they don't have to call us. But yeah, of course, if they have issues.
Worst case.
Yeah,
Worst
you
case.
can call someone like us to come in.
Ray, do you have anything to add in terms of the basic protocols and systems that they should have in place?
No, that would definitely be the key point. It's just to ensure you have at least a minimal, virus malware type detection. Again, to Burton's point, Microsoft actually does provide essentials and what have you. And if obviously you want to go beyond all that, but you have to really gauge in terms of what your operation is. So if you need to add additional layers of defense based on your current business. You want to ensure that you have that level of security to accommodate what your business practice is. So if it's just, internet type of activity you do all day, all night for your business, essentials is going to be fine from a signature type based detection. But if you are operating a business that requires a bit more detection capability mechanism, then you add another layer on top of your antivirus. So that's how far you want to go to balance out, technology with the business requirements you actually have.
I think that's all excellent advice, and as I was looking at your bio, Ray, it said you had 25 years of experience, and you don't look old enough to have 25 years of experience.
That's what happens when you take all the hair off.
Hey, that's good advice. But because you've had so many years of experience in the sector, in the industry, and you've got to have some great stories to tell about things that have happened, things that have been missed. Share a couple of those stories with us.
Yeah, sure. Again, most of my career, I've actually worked for corporate, but along the line, you meet up with family and friends. Friends tell you, hey, I got a side business here, side business there. So you start getting into discussions regarding, oh, you got a great business. Oh yeah, I got an office and all that good stuff. And we start getting into conversations. Oh, okay, so how are you protecting that business of yours? And obviously their focus is making the money. It's like, hey, I'm not the IT guy, but I take that opportunity to at least have the conversation. So during the wine and dine conversation, we obviously identify he's not really taking into consideration, oh, I need that, oh, I need this, I need that. But I took the opportunity to at least put him on the right path, without denting his wallet. So, but at the end of the day, I put him on a program to ensure that this new business that he actually started actually kicks off on the right path. So it wasn't really expensive. It's just, general basic endpoint protection, antivirus. Oh, by the way, I'm using the Xfinity router. That's great. I would be dependent on that, but put another layer of firewall there just to put yourself just to get another layer of defense into your company. So, I mean, that was just the practice I suggested for him. But it's interesting enough because now you start getting these calls. Now you become his consultant going forward once you provide one advice, and it goes from there. And obviously, based on my busy schedule, I'm unable to do these side business. And if I knew Burton back then, I would have said, hey, call Burton up. He's got a service going on. He can support you going forward. But yeah, I mean, these are the opportunities the business wants to take. So I advise them to look into maybe like an MSP. It's basically a managed service provider to provide you your IT support, your security support, and what have you. So he finally jumped on that bandwagon. He's actually doing well. So it's good to see at least he's now considering some of the aspects of the security now for his business. So that's just one thing I just remember working with a small business there.
That sounds like you're a happy hour consultant there. Right? For
Those
side beer.
Best conversations, right?
Yeah, side beer security, right? So Burton, yeah, you've got to have some incredible stories to share as well. Why don't you share a couple of thoughts on some stories that you experienced?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So yeah, Ray's been in the corporate world, but us dealing with small businesses, and I've owned Integral for the past 28 years, and I had to go the Ray route with shaving my head too to kind of keep that youthful appearance. But yeah, the challenge with small businesses is that a lot of them consult with your in-store reps, like at Geek Squad or some of the other big box stores. And those, when it comes to individuals, they can definitely help out those. But if you've got a small business and you have to worry about your pocketbook, you definitely need to get the right advice so that you're not buying unnecessary stuff. We've seen small business customers that have had maybe one or two employees that just do everything in-house being sold like, $1,000 Cisco routers in order to keep their, to keep their business safe. We've seen slightly larger businesses get slapped with a ton of extra cybersecurity routers and other things that they didn't need, because the challenge is that some IT companies have a one size fits all approach when it comes to dealing with small businesses. So we've always had to come in and make sure that small businesses, especially your mom and pops, are getting the right technology that are going to work for their business, because we've seen them fall for the prey of just a neighborhood kid who thinks they know how to set up their cybersecurity threat or the threat protection, and then they get hit with ransomware or something worse. Then they come to us not realizing that there are some practical things that small businesses can do in order to keep themselves safe from all of the cyber threats out there. So, I mean, I could probably take up the rest of the half hour going into detail as far as the different stories that we've gone into. But I mean, it's a lot challenging for mom and pop and solo businesses as far as what things they need to do in order to stay safe, because they always want to go the consumer route rather than thinking of themselves like a business and doing things that businesses should do in order to keep their stuff safe. I mean, one story, and then I'll pass it on, but a lot of the small businesses that we run into have never backed up their information, if that tells you anything. And so you're talking about businesses that are dealing with large amounts of corporate data. If they lost that data, they would be out of business, but they've never backed up their information. And sometimes they think it's going to happen through osmosis, but in more instances than not, it's just a simple fact that small businesses really need to take the investment and find a credible cybersecurity expert to come in and help them make sure that they're keeping their information and their customer information safe.
So so what I'm hearing is that there's multiple layers, right? So there's the operational layer where individuals, do things that they shouldn't be doing. So they need to be trained to make sure that they don't open up strange emails and so forth. There's probably cloud-based services that they could take advantage of to back up their data. There's probably hardware items that they should take into account, whether it's for backing up data or in terms of servers and so forth, and routers and firmware as well. And then there's the software component that really is able to help with detection and other things. The software piece, sometimes can be a little tricky though, because how often should that software be updated and refreshed, and should you subscribe to an automatic renewal? What are your thoughts on the software piece?
Well, as far as software is concerned, obviously the best thing to go with it, if you're a small business, if you can go with a cloud-based solution, like say a QuickBooks Online or Microsoft Office 365, or even a Google Docs, where the software is keeping itself up to date and you're getting that ongoing support. For business, that would probably be the best way to go. Same thing with antivirus software. If you're going with a paid service like an ESET or a Trend Micro, or even a McAfee or a Norton, I mean, that software is going to keep itself up to date. So a subscription base would definitely make more sense for a small business, because they're not worried. They don't have to worry about implementing those updates on their own. But at the same time, as far as operating system updates are concerned, that would be more of I need to contact an IT person to make sure that the software that I'm using is going to work. Because I think a lot of small businesses fall in that routine of thinking as a computer like an appliance, like you're going to buy it once and then there's nothing else that you have to do with the appliance. But with computers, I mean, there's critical software updates that come down once a year, and a lot of the small businesses that we run into haven't done an update for years, which definitely puts their information and their client information at safe, and they just don't understand the consequences of not performing those actions. So it's better if you can get software that'll take care of itself. But at the same time, you do need an expert to come in and let you know when you need to get those updates, and of course, when you need to replace that outdated technology.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. Ray, do you have anything to add in terms of software?
Yeah, no, I think Bern hit the majority of it in terms of the software that has the ability to automatically update themselves. But along the lines of operating system patches, you definitely want to make sure that you have a designated individual that has their focus on the infrastructure altogether. I get that the business is more focused on making sure the functionality of their systems is working, but it's a second thought in terms of, hey, I forgot about the operating system platform. So you want to make sure that you stay current with the operating system patches. There's a reason for why these security updates are being released on a frequent basis, because they've actually identified vulnerabilities going forward. The adversaries are targeting these. So rather than getting caught up in the state of, oh, I've not patched my operating system for months, years, or what have you. Just start getting into the habit and practice to maybe have a point person to, hey, check monthly, update, however you want to incorporate that type of process. Because from a technology and software perspective, there's that operational aspect where end users are using it, but you want to make sure you have someone that maintains it as well. So you have that designated individual that maintains the operating system health, the actual application software health. So this way he can focus on the technology side and the rest of the employees can focus on the business side of the house.
That's an excellent point, and I think that's going to be really useful for our small businesses out there. I'm going to go back to, I mentioned earlier that I was in the military. Back in my day when I was in the military, and we used to talk about emergency preparedness and disaster recovery, a lot of it was based on physical threats, right? There was physical security threats that we had to take into account. Now it's more of a digital threat, right? So it used to be about bullets, and now it's more about bits, right? So take a minute, Ray, if you don't mind, and give us your thoughts in terms of how our small businesses can prepare for an emergency or a disaster, so that they're not caught flat-footed, and if and when it does happen, that they can recover.
Right. Burton alluded to this regarding ransomware, right? And he led down the path of backups. Make sure you have a strong backup. And at the same time, plan on actually getting targeted, plan on getting attacked. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So you have to have that mindset. If they do hit us, what are we going to do? Start putting these plans together, whether it be a restore recovery type scenario. In a corporate environment, we actually have incident response plans. We plan for an actual attack. So in an event that we do have this attack, how do we actually respond to it? So we at least come up with scenarios based on the common threat vectors that's currently out there: ransomware, antivirus, phishing. You come up with these specific plans. Is if we do get caught up in a phishing attack, what does that look like? Who do I need to contact? Start establishing a communication channel to determine de-escalation points. Make sure you have a vendor contact list in an event that the software stops functioning. These are the things that you need to start preparing for. Have a good contact list in an event of an emergency, because from a support perspective, you're not always going to have a dedicated IT guy. So with that said, document your incident response plan based on certain specific attack vectors. So at least then you'll know what to do, you know who to call, and how to recover.
And Burton, I'm sure you've had clients come to you with an emergency call saying, I need help, we just got attacked, what do I do? How do you tell them, look, in the future, this is how you can avoid the panic and the emergency?
They actually wave their hands like that, Danny. I want you to know that. Yeah, exactly. Hair on fire and everything like that. But yeah, one of the things that like I had said before, one of the things we recommend people to do is to back up information, because it doesn't necessarily have to deal with a cyber attack, but technology fails from time to time. So it's important that you've got standard backup in place. But the other thing that we have to do for our small business customers too is to prepare an emergency packet. So like if they have a catastrophic loss of computers and data, that they have like company passwords on, maybe they have an offsite backup, because one of the things that we recommend as far as backing up is having a cloud backup of their information, but then also to have an on-site backup. So if they're backing up with like an external hard drive or a NAS or any other hardware backup device, that they have it on hand. So if something happens, they can quickly restore that data and get up to working, as opposed to like if you had a cloud backup that you would have to wait for days to get your information back. But like Ray said, you do definitely have to plan, or we try to educate our customers to plan for what if that day happens where you have catastrophic data loss. So you're not waving your hands with your hair on fire saying that, Burton, we've got a computer issue. That customers can start that recovery process on their own, as opposed to always having to reach out and waiting for a minimum of 1 to 3 hours for an IT person to show up to even begin the process of getting their stuff up and going. But the other thing that we are always preaching to our non-customers is to develop a relationship with an IT professional to make sure that they do have a resource to reach out to just in case something bad happens with the computers or the network within their office.
That's an excellent point, having those resources already in place. Why don't you take a minute, if you don't mind, Burton? I'm sure you've got a list. You may not be seeing that, but you've got a lot of experience in terms of what some resources might be that our audience members, our viewers can look into. It's not going to be exhaustive, of course, but you talk about NAS and you talk about all these other things. Have you got a few things that they, at a minimum, should be looking into?
Well, the first thing that they should be looking to is to make sure that none of their corporate emails have been hacked. So there's a great website called haveibeenpwned.com, which will allow them to put their company emails in to find out if that email has been leaked in a data breach. And I'll do a screen share real quick of Have I Been Pwned so that you can look at it. But there's the website, Have I Been Pwned. So what you can do is put in your corporate email. I'll use an email that we no longer use that's been hacked. But if you put in Have I Been Pwned and type in the company email, if you've been pwned, that means that that company email has been part of a large scale data breach. And so you want to be preemptive in that and change whatever passwords that this email account used in order to get access to the account. The other thing you can do with Have I Been Pwned, if you're a small business user, is put in a phone number. So if you put in a phone number, and I'm not going to type one in, but if you put a phone number, it'll also let you know if that phone number has been part of a large scale data breach, because what we can understand is that phone numbers can be used to call companies to trick employees into giving out sensitive information. You can do what's called whale phishing, which means you get a call from the CEO that there's a problem. And of course, the employee gives out information. So that is a good preemptive deal that you can do. Now, as far as offsite backups, a great website that you can use for online backup is at carbonite.com, and I'll pull that up real quick. But Carbonite is an excellent resource that you can use in order to back up your small business or even your large business as far as having cloud-based backup. So Carbonite, I think you can get it as low as, they make you pay annually, so it's 84 bucks a year for unlimited backup of your computers and of your servers as well. So if you need a resource to back up that information, definitely check out Carbonite to make sure that you have a decent cloud backup that's done automatically, and it's HIPAA secure or HIPAA compliant, which means that it's not prone to criminals getting access to your personal data. Now, as far as IT resources, you obviously want to use an IT company that either can remotely access your information or an MSP like Ray had suggested, where they're constantly monitoring your systems to make sure that criminals aren't getting into your deal. Because the problem with using like the lone computer guy is they're only available when they're available. If you sign up for MSP or a managed service provider, they're constantly monitoring your system so that if something catastrophic happens, the IT company is notified sometimes before you are, and you can take a preemptive strike to make sure that all of your information is safe and secure. So, and then finally, like Ray said, just make sure that you've got a resource too that can just come in and check your computers on a monthly basis to make sure those important updates are installed.
Excellent. Ray, have you got some additional resources that our audience can turn to?
I don't know where I want to inject myself. I think Burton pretty much covered it all. Yeah, those are basically the key resources in terms of at least checking whether or not you are compromised. I mean, there's other there's actually websites out there to determine whether or not if you are an e-commerce small business company. You also have that ability. I don't have the resource on hand right now, but yeah, you can input your website in there to determine whether or not you've been blacklisted. So if there was a question asked, how come I'm not receiving any email communication, or why is my email getting bounced? It's maybe because your domain got blacklisted. So there's one website that you can probably check out to see whether or not you do fall in a blacklist. But other than that, I think Burton covered a good portion of that. And again, my understanding as far as small businesses goes, take advantage of MSPs, because those are the guys that becomes your IT, your security, your 24/7 monitoring team, and then their responsibility is to make sure they patch everything, right? So that's one less thing a small business needs to worry about, because you're basically paying them for insurance at that point.
That's An excellent point. You know, as we wrap up, I just want to make sure I give each of you an opportunity to, you know, what's the number one or two things that a small business owner can do today to improve their cybersecurity posture? Not wait till next week, not wait till next month or next year, but go out there today. As soon as you're done watching this webinar, go implement it right now. What's the number one to two things, Ray?
I would target my privileged access. Understand the user accounts these individuals currently have and make sure you adjust their permissions accordingly. Because if they don't need administrative rights to the system, give them the least privilege they need to do their duty. That is probably one area you can probably review, take a look at, because, you know, for the most part, if it is just general computer access, they have local administrative accounts to that system. So again, I don't know what the practices are, whether or not they actually have a dedicated identity access management platform, but I would look at the identity access management aspect of that. Make sure that the employees have their least privilege assigned or aligned with reduced access.
Excellent point. Burton, leave us with your pearls of wisdom in terms of the number one or two things that they have to do today.
I would say probably update your operating system on your computer and devices. The slide that I'm going to show is kind of out of date as far as operating systems, but yeah, just so people can see it. Number one, you want to make sure that you are using Windows 10 on your company computers, because believe it or not, Danny and Ray, we still run into people that are using Windows 7 for business computers, and you definitely can't do that. Believe it or not, Windows 10 is free, and even though 11 may be on the horizon, at least get to 10 because it's got another 5 years of support from Microsoft. Next would be if you're running a Macintosh computer, Big Sur is the update that you want to get for your Mac. And the important reason why you want the most current operating systems is because these operating systems are supported by Apple, Android, Windows, and on all the above companies. So if you've got the latest and greatest, that means you're protected from the most recent security threats out there. So if you have a Mac user, you want to get Big Sur, which is the most current operating system. If you're an Android user, Android 11 would be a good one to go with. And then finally, I know iOS 15 has hit the market, but at least get to 14 if you're using smart devices. And the reason I included smart devices in there because most work staff are working from their mobile devices. So it's not important to make sure that your computer's updated, but you need to make sure your smartphone and tablets are up to date as well. So those are the things that I would highly recommend that people would do right now to prevent a cybercrime or a cybersecurity incident from happening at their small business.
Fantastic. Gentlemen, I can't thank you enough. Burton, Ray, virtual applause from all our audience throughout the country watching this today. I want to thank you for your time, and I want to thank you for sharing your experience with us. It was fantastic hearing from you, and I know our audience understands how important it is to protect all of the aspects of their business. This was incredibly informational, and I want to thank you so much. And I'm sure the TLC team will be sharing today's presentation with our network. Additionally, we invite everyone to sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date with what's happening with the Latino Coalition. We are excited for the virtual edition of our Latina Prosperity Summit coming up this fall, where we'll have the opportunity to talk to leading Latinas who are breaking barriers across the United States. This event is free to attend and will be live streamed on October 14th from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. For more information on this event and future updates, please visit thelatinocoalition.com, or email us at info@thelatinocoalition.com. You can also follow updates on our social media pages, and you can register for all of those today. I want to thank you all for tuning in. As I usually say, stay safe, aim high, and thrive. Thank you all so much. We'll see you soon. Thank you again.